The PlayStation Store still has a great flash sale going on right now. In the other video, we took a look at games under the cost of $10, but in this video, we're going to be expanding our horizons a little bit and removing that budget cap, so these games are a little bit more expensive, but nonetheless, they are great deals. Without further ado, let's get right into this. First up, we have Rise of the Tomb Raider 20-year celebration for $17.99. Yes, Rise of the Tomb Raider is a little bit older of a game at this point, released back in 2016. The Xbox One version actually came out a year before that, but it is still a fantastic game, and considering we're coming up on the release of Shadow of the Tomb Raider, now is definitely not a bad time to check out Rise of the Tomb Raider. I've always said that I found this game to be a significant improvement upon the 2013 Tomb Raider title, and this 20-year celebration version adds a bunch of new content. It has the DLC content, some extra levels. There's a VR component to it as well, so if you have PlayStation VR, that's something else you can look at. $17.99, a bit steep of a price point given that it is a little bit older of a game, but still I think it's absolutely worth it given the quality. It doesn't have a gigantic amount of content, but the content that is present is excellent. Next up, we have Torment Tides of Numenera for $14.99. Now, this is a game that is not going to be up everyone's alley, especially if you are a console gamer. You're probably not all too familiar with games like this, as it's very slow-paced, very much heavy on the storytelling, and it will require a little bit of patience. But once you get into the game, you quickly find out that the world building in this game is absolutely phenomenal, and for that reason alone, I would highly recommend you to give this game a look, especially if you are into more story-driven games. Just bear in mind that it is a lot of reading. However, there are some traditional RPG mechanics in there, and those are done rather well, but you're going into this game for the storytelling, and that is done exceptionally well, even though it does start a little slow. For $14.99, I would say it's a good pickup. Next up, we have the Jak and Daxter Bundle for $19.99. Now, quite expensive for a Jak and Daxter Bundle considering how old these games are, but this gives you everything Jak related. Gives you Jak 1, Jak 2, Jak 3, as well as Jak Combat Racing. The only games you're missing are Daxter, which was a PSP title, and then Jak the Lost Frontier. But this bundle definitely compiles the best games in the franchise. Jak 1 through Jak 3 are all great. Jak 2 kind of takes the game into a more mature route. That is as mature Jak and Daxter can get. Jak 1 is a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more colorful. Jak 2 ramps up the action combat, and then the combat racing game is also kind of fun. And to get all of those games for $19.99, I would say that's pretty good. That's $5 a pop. And if you're very nostalgic with the Jak games, playing them on the PS4 is definitely nice with better visuals, trophy support, all that good stuff. $19.99, I would say, is a good deal.
Hang on, Dax. It's gonna be close. Jak and I are world.
Next up, we have The Long Dark for $11.99. Survival games usually weren't a major franchise, especially on consoles, but after they had tremendous success on PC, they eventually made their way over to the PlayStation 4, and The Long Dark has been one of the best survival games that has been released. It's a survival game set in an open-world environment, and you play it in first person. The game takes place in frigid Canadian wilderness, where the player assumes the role of a crash-landed pirate struggling to survive after a global disaster. The game has your typical survival elements, a survival simulation that accounts for body temperature as well, however, and elements such as caloric intake, hunger, thirst, fatigue, wind chill, wildlife, and a bunch of other environmental factors. You do have two game modes. There's a story mode as well as a survival mode. The game is also rather engaging, a lot of replayability, and considering that it's at just $11.99, this is the perfect price to check out Long Dark for.
Like you.
Next up, we have Middle-earth Shadow of War for $19.99. Surprising that Middle-earth Shadow of War is this cheap considering it just released back in October of last year, and they have been updating the game, so the game is an ever-evolving experience. Actually, the latest update that they released added a bunch of new content and removed microtransactions from the game, so that is a big thumbs up, and the price for Middle-earth Shadow of War is fantastic. While it did have some controversy initially, that has been remedied, and the gameplay in this title is still great. If you played Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, it builds on that game and just makes it a better experience. experience. And considering it's only at $19.99 right now, and considering the experience this game offers has gotten better and better, I would absolutely give this a recommendation. I should also let you guys know that there is an absolutely free game demo available for it, and if you download that demo and play it and you enjoy it and end up picking up the game, your progress will transfer over. So give that a look if you're not completely sold on the title. Next up, we have God Eater 2 Rage Burst for $14.99. God Eater is often described as an anime Monster Hunter, and I can definitely get those comparisons. However, it has its own unique elements. There is a more in-your-face story, but the game itself mechanically is just a very polished game. Is it absolutely perfect? No. There are some redundant missions. However, if you like grindy style gameplay, you're gonna absolutely love God Eater 2, and if you like the anime look to it, even better. Maybe I would have stayed away from a $49.99 or a $59.99 price point, but at just $14.99, that is considerably cheaper than Monster Hunter World, and I wouldn't say God Eater 2 is quite as good as Monster Hunter World, but it's a good game in its own right, and for that price, it is well worth it. Next up, we have Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 for $17.99. Now, I know that Dragon Ball FighterZ has already been released, but the Xenoverse games are far different than the Dragon Ball FighterZ games. The Xenoverse titles are a little bit more arcadey, a little bit more story-driven. They've got a pretty robust single-player component to them with a lot of customizability, a good amount of content, and an overall engaging experience. Obviously, the competitive scene in Xenoverse 2 is nothing like FighterZ, but that's why I'm saying they're two distinct experiences, and just because FighterZ is released doesn't mean you have to push Xenoverse 2 to the wayside, and Xenoverse 2 is a great game at $17.99. If you're a Dragon Ball fan, there's a lot of fun to be had, but I would recommend you, this is a title that you really need to be a Dragon Ball fan, especially how they do the single player mode. Being a fan of the franchise and knowing the majority of the lore is going to help out a ton in the enjoyment. Next up, we have Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony for $29.99. Now, you might be wondering, this is Danganronpa 3, can I jump into this game without playing the first two? Well, you actually can. Well, I would recommend you to play through the first two games because they are great games. Danganronpa 3 introduces a whole new cast of characters and world, so you can play this game without playing the first two titles. However, the first two titles are so good. Unfortunately, they are not on sale right now, so I thought I would just recommend Killing Harmony for now. If you already played the first two games and you've been waiting on a discount for the third title, well, what are you waiting for? $29.99 for Killing Harmony is great. I don't know if I would say Danganronpa 3 is the best of the three games, but that's because they are all so good, and I would say that Danganronpa 3 is just as good as Danganronpa 2, but honestly, I'll be going back and forth all day on which one I like the best. If you like good story-driven games, a good murder mystery, this is gonna be right up your alley. Yes, it does look a little zany at first, a little bit too much anime for some people, but trust me, once you play it, once you give it an hour or two, you're gonna be absolutely hooked into the world and characters.
When we talk this through.
Next up, we have Tales of Zestiria for $14.99. Now, I've always talked about how the Tales of franchise is a very consistent JRPG franchise, and the games are usually very good but not great. Tales of Berseria, in my opinion, bucked that trend, but Tales of Zestiria really did not. It's a competent JRPG. There were some storytelling elements that I was not a big fan of. I won't go into them to avoid spoilers, but there's just a decision made in the latter portion of the game that turned off a lot of players. The gameplay in the title is still your standard Tales fare, and that is very good, and considering it's at just $14.99, you want a quality JRPG, Tales of Zestiria is pretty good, but I wouldn't say it's the best among the franchise. And finally, speaking of JRPGs, I've got another one for you guys, and that is .hack GU Last Recode for $24.99. Now, I said I've got another one for you guys, but this is actually a couple of games. This includes all three .hack GU titles from the PS2 days, as well as an additional fourth episode that isn't quite as long as the three main games. I was a big fan of the .hack GU games. While they haven't aged incredibly well, this remaster is done very well, and the gameplay itself was always a ton of fun. It's a fast-paced, action-oriented combat system, so it's very engaging to even a modern audience. And the real killer part about .hack GU has to be the story. The story is really good, and each of the three games span around 25 to 30 hours, so to complete them all, you're talking a lot of investment, and then you do have that fourth episode to delve into as well. A lot of content for your money, and at $24.99, I would say this collection is absolutely worth it. Honestly, as far as game collections and remasters go, this is one of the best ones that you're gonna come across. So that is gonna conclude this video. This PSN flash sale has a ton of great deals. I hope you guys appreciated these PSN deals as well. All of these are really good across a wide variety of different genres. And that is going to conclude this video. Sound off with your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.